Hey guys, my name is Jay and this is Allison, and today we're taking you through squat 101, all right? So probably one of the most functional and foundational movements we do in CrossFit is the squat, and we have several different variations of it, but it all begins with the unweighted, unloaded air squat. So we're gonna talk Allison through the proper progressions of an air squat, and then we'll basically take those progressions, transfer it onto the barbell, back squat, front squat, overhead squat, and just kind of show you how it all ties together, all right? So first things first, on the air squat, all right? Normally, she's standing here, she's got about a hip width stance. We want to kind of widen those feet out just a little bit, get about shoulder width, all right? Her basically toes are pointed forward up to about 15 degrees out. So we don't want to go super wide with our feet out. So straight forward or up to about 15 degrees. And just like on the deadlift, we talked about, externally rotating our feet inside our shoes and kind of activating our hips and glutes and getting those muscles involved in the squat. We want to do the same thing here. So when she does that, you can kind of see her kind of knees kind of come out just a little bit and hips come forward. Everything's nice and tight, all right? So that's step one of the squat. First thing that moves on the squat is, contrary to probably popular belief, is instead of the knees coming forward, we want to actually send the hips back, all right? So imagine we just got back from the grocery store, and we got two big handfuls of groceries, and we can't really close the car door, so we're going to kind of put our butt up to the door and pop it. That's exactly how we originate the air squat. So she kind of sends those hips back, all right? And we're going to have to kind of counterbalance ourselves in the squat. So once those, we're going to actually put our hands out in front of us, send the hips back, and basically descend to the hip crease, goes below the knee, keeping those feet flat on the ground if you're looking at her from the side. Nice flat back, and she's going to drive up through the whole foot, predominantly the heel, stand back up to full extension, squeezing the glutes at the top, all right? So give me about maybe 3 more squats, Allison. This is your typical air squat, all right? Now, common flaws we typically see in the air squat, probably one of the most common is knee valgus. That's where the knees do not track over the toes. So Allison's going to attempt to demonstrate this the best she can, where she comes down into that squat. And what we're looking for in a perfect squat is that knee would actually be tracking over her index toe, which would be the toe beside her big toe there. So I want that knee over those toes. When those knees kind of come forward, we're kind of losing everything, all the muscles on the backside, and we're basically doing a quad dominant squat, and it's actually very, very dangerous under load. I mean, we're going to pull something, we're going to hurt something if we're squatting like that. So again, pushing those hips back, keeping those knees wide, tracking over the toes, driving up through the heel, as opposed to letting those knees kind of cave in on a valgus squat. All right, so another issue with squatting is sometimes we have very poor ankle mobility, and we have to really overcompensate with our hip and our forward chest lean to actually get into a deep squat position. Allison's going to try to demonstrate this. Notice her knee is not coming forward of the toe, and so it's basically a vertical shin at this point, and she really has to compensate with that forward chest lean to get that hip depth that we're looking for there. All right, so as she comes back up, you notice me, as I'm squatting down here, my knee comes very forward to that toe, and I'm able to keep my chest very upright. So that's basically what we're wanting to do here. If we lack the ankle mobility, we have to really compensate in order to kind of get that. So let's look at that one more time, Allison. So keeping those shins vertical, really having to lean forward. All right, if we allow those knees to come forward in that squat, she can bring that chest more upright, like so. If we don't have the ankle mobility, probably one of the best, most effective quick stretches I've encountered in my time at CrossFit, we're going to come over here to just a regular little box. Allison's just simply going to put her foot up there, keeping that heel nice and flat on the ground. She's going to lean forward, put her chest, putting pressure on her quad, putting her hand down here in the side or up front, anywhere she can kind of grab a hold of and get a little bit more pressure, but really focusing on keeping that knee forward, keeping that heel down, and getting a very deep stretch in the back of that calf. And we're going to hold this at least 30 seconds, and it's going to buy us a little bit more range of motion. That way, when we go back down into that squat, like I said, we can kind of keep that chest more upright, allowing those knees to come more forward in the squat. So this is one of my favorite corrective measures to kind of buy us a little ankle mobility in a very short amount of time. All right? Okay, so now that we've mastered the basics of the air squat and we are making sure our knees tracking over toe, we got a nice flat back, reaching depth, we've got good ankle mobility. We're ready to move that movement onto a loaded version of, and here we're going to talk about the back squat. All right, so back squat, notice obviously the barbell starts in the rack. We like to set up a certain weight every time we kind of come into grabbing this barbell. If we kind of get in that little routine, it just seems to make the movement go a little bit better. So what I'm going to have Allison do, she's going to kind of step forward. She's going to roll the barbell back to the back of these J hooks here. So kind of pulling the barbell back toward her. Her feet are planted underneath the barbell in her, about a hip width to squat width stance. And she's going to just basically bring herself underneath the barbell, loading up the barbell right here just on the traps. Notice her hands are in relatively close, just outside shoulder length here. And she's going to stand up, take a couple steps back. All right, so here are some of the key things we're looking for, all right? Number one, when we try to get those arms kind of in line with her torso, we don't want those elbows flared way super far back, or in some cases, I've actually seen them flared forward, all right? So we want to kind of just pull that barbell into us, all right? Again, just like on deadlifts and everything else, we want a nice tight core, nice solid foundation. So a common error I will see is basically kind of a broken hip here where she kind of bend forward just a little bit, like just kind of loose core. And we're basically never regain our composure before we go into the squat. So at this point, before she does anything, she's going to stand up nice, tall, straight, squeeze those glutes, take a deep breath, nice tight core. She's going to brace these stomach muscles. You see her raise her shoulders up like that and kind of ready to go. Now she's tight. If I were to come up and like punch her in the stomach, she's going to be able to take that blow because everything is tight. From here, everything is the same as on the back squat. She's going to send those hips back, keeping those knees wide, hip crease below parallel. Notice that nice straight back, nothing rounding at any point, and then standing straight up just like so. All right, give me about 2 more reps, Allison. Now, one thing we will talk about just briefly, all right, at some point, we're going to load more weight on this bar than we can actually stand back up. It's going to happen. We're going to have to what we call bail. All right, there is a safe way to do that. These little plates right here are nice rubberized plates. They're not going to hurt anything if you drop them on the ground. So if Allison goes down and she's simply unable to stand that barbell back up, she can just simply toss it off her back, just like so. And she kind of goes forward, the barbell goes back, nobody dies. All right, so that is our safe way to bail out of. Okay, so next up we're going to be talking about front squats. All right, so we talked about this briefly in one of our on-ramp series videos, but this we're going to talk a little bit more in depth about the proper setup of the front squat and also the mechanism to fail properly if we can't stand the weight back up. All right, so Allison just basically, essentially everything's the same as on the back squat. She's going to roll that barbell back to the back of the J hooks here. Notice she's got her about shoulder width grip here. Shoot those elbows through and bring that barbell up into her front rack. Now this bar is 100% supported on her shoulders here. Her hands are on the bar, but they're basically more of a guide than anything else. That barbell is 100% supported. Go ahead, can you do the Frankenstein thing there where you let your, she can basically do front squats exactly like this. That bar, her hands are just kind of holding that barbell in place. So we can go ahead and try to re-grip that. I'm sorry to mess you up there, but yeah. So good front rack positions, you're going to take 2 steps back. All right, so if we do have to fail this lift, we do want to make sure we have room in between ourselves and the rig for that barbell to kind of come forward. But yeah, so everything is essentially the same at this point. Nice shoulder width stance with the feet, elbows up nice and high. We're going to send the hips back, keep the knees wide, feet flat on the ground, torso upright. This is your textbook front squat right here. All right, so again, at some point, I'm going to talk about 2 things. One, we want to make sure that torso is not rounding as she's coming up, so allowing those elbows to drop. We want to avoid that if at all possible. So if we're finding ourselves doing that in the middle of a front squat, we've probably gone too heavy. We need to back off the weight, 1. And 2, let's say we do get down there in the bottom of it and we just simply cannot stand it back up. The proper failing mechanism is to just kind of toss that weight forward. Let it hit the ground. That weight is not going to hurt anything when it hits the ground like that, all right? So that is your front squat and your belly mechanism for the front squat. Okay, so we want to talk about one more variation on the front squat, and that's for guys like me that have horrible mobility and have a really hard time getting the front rack. Now, this is a temporary thing that I'll allow some of my members to do while we work on that mobility issue and stuff. But this hold that we're getting ready to demonstrate is called the I Dream of Genie front rack hold, all right? So she basically, instead of putting those elbows through in that good front rack position, she's instead, when she comes here, she's gonna cross her hands over. Again, 100% of the barbell weight is supported on her shoulders. She's gonna stand up and she can go ahead and take a step back. And so, but yeah, we can still do that front squat from this position. A little less stable. It has no transferability to the power clean or anything like that. That's the reason I'm not a huge fan of it. But if it's the difference between getting in a workout on front squats that day and not, then yeah, we'll use this one as we continue to work on that mobility. So this is your I Dream of Jeannie front rack hold grip. Okay, so the final version of squats we're going to talk about today is the overhead squat. All right, so we've demoed the back squat, the front squat. The technical points of those are really no different when doing the overhead squat. Just the setup and our grip is a little bit different, and obviously a lot more challenging mobility-wise if we have those issues. But set up, pulling up, getting under the barbell is the exact same way. She's going to roll the barbell back to the back of the J-hooks. We're going to start with our back squat grip here. She's going to slip through, coming out in a good back squat position. So stand up, take 2 steps back. From here, we got to move our hands out into a comfortable overhead squat grip. So basically, we're going to try to get our snatch grip on there. So we got these little rings on the side of the bar here. Usually, our index finger in between or on the second ring out there is about good for most of us. All right. So once she has a good overhead squat grip, snatch grip on the barbell, we're going to do a back rack jerk, jumping the barbell up overhead, and a good externally rotated position here where my shoulders are kind of rotated forward. I can see her underarms clearly. All right, so from here, this is our starting position. Then again, everything remains the same. We're going to send the hips back, keeping the torso upright, hip crease below parallel, nice wide knees, driving through the foot just like so. All right, so this is your overhead squat. And again, we have a belling mechanism here where if we simply can't get up or the weight shifts while it's overhead, she can simply allow the weight to come forward, dropping the barbell right there on the floor, no harm, no foul, everybody lives, we're good to go, go home, live to fight another day. All right, so that is your overhead squat. Okay, so we've talked about the back squat, the front squat, the overhead squat. One other, I guess, movement where we do a lot of squatting is the thruster, and this is a common movement that we will do in our Metcons. The other squats, we're over there on the rig, very slow, controlled fashion, you know, easy enough. All right, well, when we get into doing thrusters, we're basically combining a front squat into a push press overhead. So much more dynamic movement, a lot more moving. Allison's going to demonstrate the thruster for us, then we'll talk about some of the more common errors that we're seeing here. So she's going to clean the barbell up, descend into a front squat, and then as she comes back up, thrusting the barbell up overhead. All right, so do a couple more thrusters just like so. All right. One of the common faults I see with the thruster, one, not getting to depth, or two, our chest starts caving in the bottom of the movement. So as she comes forward, those elbows drop, the back rounds, and we're basically coming forward. That's a very inefficient and dangerous position. So we want to kind of make sure keeping those elbows up nice and high in the bottom part of that squat. A second very common error, as she comes back up, she actually starts pressing before the power of her legs transfers into the barbell. So starts pressing early and basically just using a lot more energy than she needs to and a lot more shoulder strength than she needs to. So you want to time that barbell as you're coming up out of the bottom of the squat to basically make the barbell weight. Let's just do a front squat and make the bar bounce real quick. She comes up, that bar will continue traveling up. And then once that bar is going, and then you're going to finish the press out overhead. So use those big, strong legs to move that barbell and try to avoid using those little bitty arms. You know what I'm saying? So that is your thruster movement if you encounter that in a Metcon here at CrossFit Cygnus.